Before we begin today's podcast, I'd like to disclaim that this episode will be among the most controversial and sensitive episodes discussed thus far in the Point of Discourse. Some of the things talked here will be a matter of perspective. With that said, enjoy this episode of Transpacific Dialogue. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, people of the world. I'm your host, Mo. As we all know, the 20th anniversary of the most prolific terrorist attack of the 21st century is upon us. Yes, it's been 20 whole years since the events of September 11, 2001, or as we know it more often, 9/11. This month will also mark the 20th anniversary of the War on Terror and will be the first monthsary of the fall of Afghanistan back into Taliban control. Seeing the relevance of the topic of terrorism nowadays, this episode of the Transpacific Dialogue subseries will be focusing on America's forever war. And joining me today is my good friend Miguel to ask his questions. So, what are your questions?
So my questions, syempre, we're gonna start at where the topic is, where the hottest is. You know where it is?
Of course. Oh, don't make an Afghanistan joke this early. It's distasteful, dude.
I am not gonna make an Afghanistan joke. Don't worry about it. But I am gonna ask about it though.
All right.
So, para malaman natin like what we're gonna get into over the next few episodes. Uh, so, where did all this start, pre? Like, was it the Soviet-Afghan War or was it something else?
Well, see, this all started in the year 700 CE when this merchant named Muhammad. No, I'm kidding. We're not going that far back. Um, okay, so we'll start with like how America suddenly became like the object of hate for Islam in the 20th century.
Yeah, true.
So this started with this Egyptian writer named Sayyid Qutb, who saw American culture in general to be barbaric when he visited Colorado in 1950. I mean, to be fair, it's really odd for a conservative Muslim to, in the 1950s of all time periods,
Mm-hmm.
to leave his colonial domain of Egypt and go to the United States. What he saw there was really something else compared to his culture, and he felt threatened by it. Like he hated uh, how much general freedom that women had, especially with their clothing, with how they acted around men, stuff like that. He deemed it to be degenerate,
Ah,
and basically he also complained about how the men seemed so unkempt and unruly by Islamic standards. Back in the 50s, like you wouldn't really see an American with a beard, so he said like, why don't these men cover up the imperfections of their faces and stuff like that? Why do these men get so vulgar haircuts? And with women, he's like, why are they allowed to teach when their whole purpose is to serve us as the forebearers of our
damn.
children? And just a disclaimer, what I'm saying here isn't the viewpoint of Islam as a whole. This is the viewpoint of a radical conservative Islamist back in 1950. He's a lot more radical than today's Muslims, obviously.
I mean,
And
true, true.
and basically, he started writing about this when he returned to Egypt. And when his papers spread around Egypt, it eventually spread around the whole Muslim world because what's said in Mecca broadcasts around the world, much like how what Rome says broadcasts around the world for Catholics. And this general perception that America is a degenerate place where women are given undeserved freedom of rights and where men were allowed to be as degenerate as possible became a thing, which is ironic when you consider how conservative the United States was in the 1950s.
True. The irony of it all now.
Like,
But
if you consider the 1950s as uh, some sort of like conservative paradise in the United States, like you have no idea how much is the Muslim world hated America at the time for being so
free.
weird, weird for them. And
Mm.
this whole thing kept on increasing because the US was supporting Israel throughout its existence from 1947 all the way up to the present. And remember, Israel had to fight like 9 wars with its neighbors, all of whom were Muslim, so that they would survive. And the
Jesus
US was the
Christ.
one supplying their arms. So the Muslim world steadily hated America because they see it as backing uh, Jewish invaders of the homeland. So go figure. Um, Muslims really started to develop a resentment for the states for their arming of Israel and for allowing what they call like an illegitimate state to exist. And
Oh,
after that, well, the U.S. also backed a monarchy in Iran, which wasn't supposed to be there because the Persian monarchy didn't exist before 1955, and the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Pahlavi, was basically kept in power by the states because of interests of oil with the United Kingdom. Yes, this really was about oil, this particular instance. And considering the degeneracy that we just spoke about, that rubbed off on the Shah, and he allowed for the liberalization of women. And yeah, there's a
mm,
lot of Western ideas that came to Iran in the 1960s and 70s. And that kind of culminated in 1979 when the Iranian radical conservatives decided, yo, is enough. We got to be ruled by Islam itself. So they set up the Shia dominated government that is modern day Iran, the Islamic
ah,
Republic of Iran,
oh,
as
okay.
a direct answer to the US, which is why America also feels kind of threatened by Iran because it was built out of the very purpose of hating America.
All of this was started because of an Egyptian. Is this true?
The ideological stand, yes, that the whole modern concept of Wahhabism, which actually came from Saudi Arabian teachings, was indeed spread by an Egyptian. That's basically
That's
how it went.
that's the sad. And let's go back to the part the Jewish invaders. Were they
Oh
invaders?
no, no, no. We're not touching on that today. Nope. No.
No, we're not. All right. Okay. Okay. Okay.
We're gonna probably save that for another episode or something, like America's relationship with like Jews and stuff like that. And no, that's not a dog whistle for Nazis. No, not at all.
True.
Um,
True. True.
this this is a purely academic discussion, I swear. Now, anyway, um, after the Iranian Revolution, we suddenly have like a lot of destabilizing events in the Middle East, such as the Iran-Iraq War, where Saddam Hussein decided that Iran was too dangerous to stabilize as like a radical Islamic republic, and
Mm,
that went on for like 10 years. And at the same time as the Iran-Iraq War, there was the Soviet-Afghan War. And see, this is where Afghanistan falls into play. With Afghanistan, basically, the Soviet Union decided to intervene when Afghanistan had started having civil conflicts with itself over adopting socialism or a secular government, or not a secular government, a socialist secular government, or an Islamic theocratic government. Now, when the Soviets started intervening in this war, Muslims in Afghanistan thought that the Soviets were going to try to stamp out Islam in the area. And so they called the Holy War, or a jihad, as we now know it. In this
ah. All
jihad,
right.
in this jihad, these Muslims coalesced into the group known as the Mujahideen. And the Mujahideen basically comprised of Muslims from all around the world, most prominently from Saudi Arabia, coming to fight the godless communist infidels, so they called. And in this war, the Soviet Union didn't really make much headway for 10 years because all they could really control were the main roads. They could not for the life of them control the provinces and the rural outbacks because the Mujahideen was a master at ambushing. It's kind of like well, there is a reason why the Soviet Afghan War was called Russia's Vietnam because it really was. Like
It was in
in
desert
terms,
Vietnam.
yeah, it was the desert Vietnam, and the Russians, well, try as they might, they really couldn't do anything. I mean, by the end of it, like 40,000 Russians died, I think.
Forty
Yeah,
thousand. Oh my God! What?
yeah. Like they really, you know how the Soviets had this doctrine since World War II about like mass assaults, like just keep sending men until like the enemy is overwhelmed. Yeah, that doesn't work in Afghanistan because the men
They
can't maneuver anywhere, and They're basically facing off the entire Islamic world.
Jeez.
Not only that, though,
Okay.
the United States was arming the Mujahideen with arms. Like the
Ooh.
CIA specifically was giving the Mujahideen like Stinger missiles and M16s, while the Soviets were really just using the full arsenal that they had, but couldn't really use nukes for obvious reasons. Now, given American support and relatively endless supply, the Mujahideen was able to hold out until the Soviets just gave up and went home. Now, after that, it kind of started pinning the blame on the war on the West, because obviously the Soviet Union was very European. Like most of the Russians, Ukrainians, and stuff like that, they're all from the
Mhm,
West, and
mhm,
so
mhm.
the general hatred of America suddenly combined with a general hatred of Europe in general. Because the Afghans, while they were not colonized by the British or the Russians, still saw that the Soviet Union was at fault for basically introducing socialism and threatening Islam in the area. And this general hatred of the Soviet Union grew into a general hatred of Europe because the Europeans like shared a common background and philosophy with the Soviets. Leftism, as we understand it today, originated in Europe, and the same is true with rightism.
Ah,
Now, it doesn't matter to these Afghans anymore whether you know, not I don't mean Afghans, these radical Muslims that
extreme?
were in Afghanistan, that whether it was the Soviet Union or not, as long as they're European or American or Jewish, they're persona non grata basically. And
So,
well,
so basically the entire Western world, would you call it or no?
yeah, actually, it is. Like, it doesn't matter or socialist. Like, despite you being godless or different god, they would still see you worthy of wiping out for the sake of Wahhabism's goal of Sharia law, considering that Muhammad followers to spread out and convert the world where possible. However, Muhammad, those who do not respect Muslims are no Muslims.
Ah, okay. Wow.
So after that, the Mujahideen kind of didn't know what to do with the arms that they had. So they started getting splintered lead Afghanistan. And from the rose the Taliban for the first time in the late 1980s. And after that, they started like controlling, vying for control in Afghanistan throughout the 90s. By 1996, they controlled most of the country already. Basically, what we saw before August 2021. And well, that's kind of spoiling
Yeah,
already
that'd
for
be
what we're
spoilers.
gonna discuss after. But basically, yes, this is how the whole war in Afghanistan started, because the Taliban suddenly took over in the power vacuum left by the Mujahideen's disintegration.
With and like, there's a lot of arms on the field from the Russian side, huh?
Yeah, the Russians did leave a lot, considering that they had to pull out by helicopter for the most part. So
Ooh.
you got Soviet era tanks, you got a lot of AK-47s dropped on the ground. It's see, actually there is a movie. I forgot the how a Russian unit made their last stand against the team. It's actually a pretty brutal movie, honestly.
Ah, okay. Okay. Well, I guess it's time for the next question.
Yep.
All right. Well, so pre, do you know a guy named Osama bin Laden? I hear he's a pretty infamous guy in your country, around the world, and he runs with a crew named the Taliban. Tama ba ako? Am I right?
Uh, well, Bin Laden is infamous, yes, but no, he doesn't run with the Taliban. He didn't, I should
Oh,
say. Um,
oh wow.
he he was the leader of the group that we call Al Qaeda, which is a
Ah,
splinter group from the Mujahideen. It's basically like one of the most famous terrorist groups in the world and the perpetrators of 9/11. However, one important thing to distinguish is that bin Laden took the credit for 9/11, the planning and all that. was just taking responsibility because it was his organization that carried out the attack. The real planner of the attack was this man named Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. What he basically uh, was start planning an attack on New York City because he was convinced by, I think, his nephew or something, that there were a lot of Jews in New York, so it would make a good target. As messed up as it sounds, like
Wow.
these guys were out for Jews first and foremost, and then everyone else is collateral damage.
Why is everybody
Now,
like crapping on Jews, dude? Like, I feel like the Jews are like
that's
number one and the target for everybody.
that's that's really complicated question. Honestly, um, there are many groups across history that have persecuted the Jews and all for different reasons. However, we're not going to touch on that today, so let's get back on topic. Um,
Yeah, let's go back.
so these guys targeted the Jews in New York,
Hmm.
and throughout the planning, there was actually a time when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his co-conspirators were in the Philippines, and they planned to actually commit a terrorist attack against uh, the visiting Pope at the time. I think it was John Paul II. Yeah, they nearly tried
Ooh,
to assassinate the Pope in Manila. They were
damn.
discovered. They were discovered by the police, and well, obviously that led to a firefight, and they had to flee the apartment. And the police relayed the information of terror plots by Al Qaeda to the United States government, which already took an interest in Al Qaeda by 1996 because of several bombings towards embassies in Africa. I forgot which countries in Africa, but some countries in Africa. Now,
Mm.
the U.S. government didn't really think that it was a serious threat since they can't possibly threaten the American homeland. But the thing is, there was this crazy plan that Philippine police have caught from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. It was called Operation Bohinka or Oplan Bohinka. It's one of those two.
Bohinka. That's
Yeah.
a very funny name.
I don't know what it means actually, but the plan basically called for the hijacking of at least 20 US airliners and then either detonating them over the ocean or crashing them into buildings across the United States and Japan.
20.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And the US, despite knowing this, didn't really take it seriously
Oh
because
my.
who would be crazy enough to do that, right?
True, true. Yeah, that's true. But still, wow.
Yeah, that was a thing. And of all the police agencies in the world to intercept this plan, it was the Philippine National Police. Go figure.
What? Hey, let's go. Little bit
Now,
Filipino pride there. Go ahead.
now, what basically this has to do with Afghanistan is that Al Qaeda was based in Afghanistan. They were
Mm.
allied with the Taliban. They were taking cover with the Taliban, and basically, um, they used Afghanistan as a secret base, along with like Pakistan, because the Hindu Kush Mountains are like really great for wanting to hide people when you want to travel discreetly. Like not even satellites can track you there. Now,
Ooh.
after this, um, Al Qaeda carried out 9/11, and nearly 4,000 Americans died that day, or was it nearly 3,000?
That's
Well,
a
to
lot
cut
of
it to the
people.
chase, a lot of people died on that day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure a lot of the people listening here can still remember seeing the Twin Towers fall in live. I mean, here in the Philippines, it was like 9 p.m. Of course, they're going to see it. It's primetime news. But in America, they were literally just waking up and they saw the towers get hit by planes and then fall. And then there was this third plane that crashed in the Pentagon. And then this fourth plane that was supposed to crash in either the US Capitol or the White House. No one really ever discovered what the target was. But thanks to the brave souls that were on America 1993, they brought the plane in Pennsylvania. They
Damn.
prevented the final terrorist attack from destroying the symbols of America.
Respect.
And these American martyrs are definitely like among the most famous cases of selfless heroism that took place on that day. Now, of course, with regards to the Twin Towers, it left a definitely massive scar on New York, considering that these towers were there for like 40 years by then. Oh, wait, no,
Fourth?
30, nearly 40 years,
Oh
since it
my.
was, the towers were completed in like 1969. So, yeah, more or less 30 years. And, well, the the lasting impact this had basically drove America towards rabid amounts of patriotism. But can you blame them?
I mean,
They
true.
got
True.
attacked.
Someone just like
Now,
punch you in the gut. You're gonna
yeah,
get bit.
like these were innocent civilians targeted by a faceless organization. And this led to the War on Terror and the start of the 20-year forever war, as we called it.
Not forever now.
Not forever now.
Not forever now. All
I mean,
right.
the War on Terror still is going. It's just that the phase of U.S. operations in Afghanistan is over. It's more or less now just restricted to security operations in the Middle East, like, say, for Saudi Arabia, Israel, stuff like that. But to be directly active in fighting, say, the Taliban or, ISIS, the direct phase of ground involvement for U.S. soldiers is over. It's still going on, but as we know it, the Forever War is done.
Yeah, true. America has can't can't keep it up anymore. I
Because,
guess.
like, I mean, if you think about it, the United States spent $2 trillion on Afghanistan, 1 trillion for developing the nation itself, and another 1 trillion in developing its military, its infrastructure, and its education sector. All of these grants were used in order to help the people of Afghanistan. The issue, though, is that the people of Afghanistan never really assimilated the idea of freedom and democracy. There were recent polls showing that a majority of people polled in Afghanistan still preferred Sharia law because
Damn.
it's been indoctrinated into them since they were children. There's only been one generation of Afghans that have experienced personal liberty, and the thing is, Western civilization simply just does not mix with nomads living in the Hindu Kush mountains. If you think about it,
And
the government just isn't strong enough to keep central control over Afghanistan. It's more like everyone's dependent on their local governors and warlords in order to run the country. The president almost has no power there.
yeah. And to think that parang religion is much more prevalent than any form of government there.
Yeah,
It's,
it's religion that literally unites them.
yeah, unlike in America, I guess na it's the patriotism, I guess, that unites
It's
guys.
the love of country that
Yeah,
does unite the United States.
that's
But
true.
as for Afghanistan, it's Islam that unites them.
Yeah,
Because honestly, Afghanistan should not exist as a country since there are way too many ethnic groups vying for control. Now, say, for example, if you redrew the borders of Afghanistan, you might actually find a more stable situation there. Because if Afghanistan does not exist, for example, then the ethnic minorities that belong to larger nations, like, say, the Persians going to Iran, um, the the Uzbeks and the Kyrgyz going to their respective current nations of the former Soviet republics, and the Pashtun people going to Pakistan, where most of them already live, you might find yourself an actually more stable region. But considering that Afghanistan does exist now, we're basically left with this hodgepodge of a mess that is more or less ungovernable by a central government. It needs to have a theocratic leadership in order to function properly.
okay. Well, true. Well, anything else you
Other
want to
than
say?
that, though,
Yeah.
let's see, what else have I missed? So the United States in Afghanistan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So America's involvement in Afghanistan itself began on 2001, and that was by direct order of President George W. Bush. It was so that we can hunt Osama bin Laden and kick out the Taliban. But the thing is, we kind of botched the mission early because while we did drive the Taliban back, we did not find Osama bin Laden. Bin
Yeah, you
Laden
got it.
got away. Like, he hid in the Hindu Kush mountains. And for 10 years after that, the U.S. forces were searching for him.
These
They searched
mountains, bro.
they searched high
The
and low for
mountains.
him, and basically, uh, they never really found him. Only got rumors from the CIA about potential whereabouts, and other than that, uh, what they really focused on once the Taliban was defeated in the initial phase was the reconstruction of Afghanistan itself.
Mm.
So the U.S. basically helped with the occupation of Afghanistan until they could set up a government, which was called the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Now, um, over the course of these last 20 years, uh, 2,400 Americans died, and 1,000 other NATO members died.
Oh, whew,
I mean,
damn.
it's definitely not as bad as the Soviet Union's losses.
But that it's still a lot. It's that's still a lot.
It
Damn.
really is a lot, and to think we bled for 20 years for this.
And then just like fucking someone just hit the quit button.
Actually, like there's more. Um,
What?
what is horrifying is the number of people who were wounded in action in Afghanistan. 20,000
Uh,
Americans were wounded in action. Like, do you
damn.
have any idea how many of them got post traumatic stress disorder, amputations, and all this other nasty stuff that come with frontline service? That's a lot of
I
them.
don't know. That's a lot. And then to think na to read on the news one day that the guys who you've been fighting the entire time only now rules the entire country.
It's got to be
Yikes.
depressing. It's
It's
I
gotta be
feel really bad
depressing.
for these veterans. Like they thought they were making a difference when they signed up to join and help Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, like their effort, 30 years, man, just 30 years of relative,
Yeah.
yeah.
You got you got Vietnam, man. Those Vietnam veterans, dude. Vietnam veterans are probably like, hey, it is what
First
it
time.
is, dude.
But
That's
the VA though is doing their best to try to console these poor souls. They gave their lives for this, and they did make a difference, though. Honestly, they finally
they did.
imprinted the idea of freedom to the Afghan people.
Yeah.
Like, they introduced women to education. They're not going to give that up easily.
True. True.
There's going to be a
True.
resistance to it, a peaceful
Yeah,
resistance.
especially for
But
women, right? Like
yeah,
Sharia law is like crap for women, but I think so, right?
yeah.
Or
I mean, it inherently restricts women's rights, like from the articles of clothing all the way to what a woman can and can't do. It's really restrictive. Like, how do I say this? Women are not allowed to get an education under Sharia law, nor are they allowed to participate in varsity sports, and they are not allowed to do anything without the consent of their husband or partner or father. They
oh my
have
god,
to bring everything through a man. Obviously, this is antithetical to the Western belief that all people are created equal and therefore are allowed to do anything as long as it does not break the law.
true. That's the big
Well,
yikes right
no,
there.
it's not even just the law. As long as it doesn't harm anyone.
Damn.
Now, in 10 years, though, after roughly 7 years of Bush screwing around in Afghanistan and not being able to do much in terms of hunting bin Laden,
Hmm.
Obama was elected in 2008. And by
Ah,
2011, exactly 10 years after 9/11, they were finally able to kill Osama bin Laden. But the thing is, they didn't kill him in Afghanistan. They killed him in Pakistan. They
in
found him in
Pakistan.
Pakistan. He crossed the border without anyone knowing. He just stayed in his compound. It took a SEAL team to kill him, I think. Like Navy SEALs, yeah. The Navy SEALs went in to kill him. And then they
Wow.
buried his body in the sea.
Did he get him in the mountain or no?
No, they got him in the compound, like a
Why?
concrete compound. It
Why you
almost
leave
it
the
almost
mountains then?
it almost became a massive screw up too, because like there was a Black Hawk that went down during the whole raid.
Oh, damn, damn. Well,
And they
it,
actually did that operation without letting Pakistan know it was happening, because the US had suspicions that Pakistan was suspiciously, you know, hiding this
assisting?
sort of information. Because like
Damn.
there's no way that Bin Laden stayed there for 10 years and no one knew.
Why would they hide it? Like, would they have any interest in like hiding that fact or no?
Uh, some people have theorized it's got to do with like ethno unity, like how Afghanistan's Muslim radicals are, recruiting Pashtun people. Like
Ah, true.
the same Pashtun people do exist in Pakistan, and they are also the majority government there. They're just not as extreme. But considering that, they might, have a sense of unity with their Pashtun brothers or something. This is not to demean the Pashtuns as a
Yeah, yeah,
racist
yeah,
way,
yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
That's true.
this is just explaining the possible motives as to why the Pakistani government hid Osama bin Laden. Now, the thing with bin Laden's death, the US actually took extra care to observe Muslim tradition by giving him a burial before dawn, which is why they decided to throw him out at sea.
he just said that so casually, just like you just lobbed him out to sea. But
I mean, it's not normal for. I don't think it's normal for Muslims to be thrown out to sea, but in Bin Laden's case, yeah, I do think he deserves to sleep with the fishes.
I mean, he hid under a mountain, like hide under the water this time, all right?
Hide into water forever.
Hide forever, stay there. He comes back out of nowhere. No? Whoa! All right,
No.
all right.
Anyway,
Anything else you want to add before we go to the next question?
the next question. Let's see. Well, after Obama, after Obama hunted down Bin Laden, like, they never really decided to pull out of Afghanistan because they're still busy trying to rebuild it and trying to fight
Mm,
the Taliban. But the thing is, the US was like, "No, we're not going to do any offensives against the Taliban. They're not a threat." So from Obama to Trump, they just kept things as they are, since they still want to prepare the Afghan military to fight the Taliban on their own. Now, we arrive at 2021.
ah, no.
See, in January, the situation was still the same. It was relatively stable. But then the Taliban started pushing. They started pushing hard. And the thing is, they did it so quickly, you'd suspect that there's either outside support for the Taliban or because the Afghan army just isn't ready for it. See, during the
Go ahead.
course of this offensive, there were thousands of Afghan soldiers that were killed. Um, just looking at
Mm,
the figures here, throughout the whole war, there were 70,000 Afghan security forces killed.
damn,
70,000.
70,000.
So I disagree with President Biden when he says that these guys are cowards. No, they aren't. It's just that they have bad morale. They have bad
Yeah,
leadership. I
it's
mean, the
leadership.
president fled the country before it fell.
Oh yeah, he was the first to run.
He
He
was one of
was
the
the
first to
first
run.
to run. Yikes. Yeah, well, it's it's leadership. Like you can't blame it on the grunts to run away when the freaking when
When
the
when the
leader
leaders
runs
themselves
away first.
don't want to be in it.
Yeah, but
So
well,
I disagree with President Biden there. Like, no, that it wasn't because they're cowards. It was because their leaders were cowards.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, when you think about it, they gave them training under the US military. They gave them equipment from the US military. They gave them the instruments needed for them to keep the Taliban at bay. But what did the leaders do? They left.
They left. They ran. Yikes. I know how much again? How much they spend on this, by the way? Can you
A
just repeat it one
trillion
more time?
on the
A
military.
trillion. $1 trillion. And now who has all of those equipment?
The Taliban.
Taliban.
I mean, it's not even just the equipment given to the Afghan army. It's also the equipment left behind by the US military.
Oh god damn. They
Like,
have
you know how
MRAP.
this is literally a repeat of the Soviet Afghan war? Like, come on, man.
They have MRAPs. They have MRAPs.
They have
A
MRAPs, they have
weapon.
Black Ops. I mean, I wouldn't
They
be
have
even be surprised if they got an Abrams running.
true. They have MRAPs, dude. To think that they have the weapon that was designed to fight against them. IEDs.
I mean, they can't possibly like keep these things forever. Like, I know for a fact that US military equipment is notoriously difficult to maintain, considering that it's also complex. So, I remember like someone from the army telling me once that
Hmm?
there's like seven different contractors just needed to repair one Humvee.
What? That's insane. Seven.
Yeah, like seven different companies are needed to supply the parts necessary to repair any given Humvee in the US military.
What the hell? That's insane. So I guess gagawin ng Taliban is they're gonna go up into YouTube and search like Americans fixing Humvees and guns and shit.
I mean that depends if the US is going to bite. Like we can definitely ban them from like getting any contacts outside of Afghanistan.
But they're
That's
smart
not going
enough to
to
get VPNs.
actually that's not going to stop them from getting through the black market, but it is going to slow them down significantly.
Not true.
And it's going to make their lives a lot harder.
True, true. Well,
Now then, um after July, everything started going downhill because Biden announced that the US military was withdrawing. And that just literally shattered the morale, whatever low morale the Afghan army still had.
yeah, it's gone. Like, yikes. Who were the first to go? You know? Who were the first to go?
El Presidente.
El Presidente. Dude ran away. Where'd you run away to, by the way?
I think last I heard he was in Tajikistan.
So he's
But
so did he,
I think he's going to seek refuge in Europe or something.
so it'll be parang a government in exile type of thing.
If anyone recognizes him.
Oh my god. He ran away first. Jeez.
He actually had all the money with him. Not joking. He brought the treasury with him.
Oh my god. Save the money. Scrooge McDuck.
I swear, the US better requisition the cash that the Afghan president stole. That money is hard earned American taxpayer dollars. He better give that back.
Yeah, he better. God.
And then, like, you know, leave some aside for the Afghans, considering it's also their tax money. It's just that they can't use it now because if they give the tax money back, the Taliban's just going to abuse it.
Yeah. This is the biggest yikes. It
It is a
sucks.
yikes.
Sucks.
It really is. So,
Damn.
next question.
Next question. All right. So, we're talking about different terrorist groups. So, I want to know actually, I know what's the difference between the Taliban, ISIS, and Al Qaeda? Parang they're different, but they seem like they have the same goal. Yung ba yun? Do they have the same
Well,
goal?
generally speaking, if you look at it from afar, they do have similar goals. However, they do differ in fundamentals, a lot of fundamentals.
Mm.
See, the Taliban exists to unite Afghanistan under an emirate. It's different from a republic, obviously. An emirate is like a kingdom. In the Arabic world, basically, a caliphate is the equivalent of an empire, while an emirate is the equivalent of a kingdom. And
Ah,
this is why the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE, exists. It's a bunch of emirates that came together to form a big nation of their own. It's definitely not as big as Saudi Arabia, but nonetheless, And Afghanistan wants that. The Taliban wants that kind of central control in Afghanistan, since it's religiously based. So, since it's based in religion, it's a lot easier for them to control the population because there is no ethnic majority going to be in power. It's literally just a bunch of clergymen trying to see who's the most radical of them all.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, all right, all right.
Now, uh, Al Qaeda is simply a terrorist group that wishes to wage jihad or holy war against the West.
Ah,
Now, this is more in line with the destructive nature of the Taliban. I mean, not the Taliban, Al Qaeda, of Al Qaeda. Simply because Bin Laden thinks that the West are also degenerates. He was influenced by Katab's writings. Like he did believe the Egyptian dude a
he
lot,
believed the Egyptian. Damn. So weird that parang.
and you know,
Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, and ever since 9/11, really, Al Qaeda wasn't able to really execute that much terrorist attacks, except for that one time in like 2004 or was it 2010 when someone had the balls to attack Moscow, of all places.
Oh, oh,
A bunch
I
of
did not know
people
that.
died thanks to the recklessness of Russian police.
How many?
I'm not sure. I forgot the statistics, but it was the FSB or the Federal Security Branch that kind of screwed things up by firing blindly and ended up racking up a bunch of collateral damage.
What? They fired blindly? What, smoke grenades? Like
Yeah,
M-frame
there were smoke
style?
grenades, and then the FSB decided we're going in, and with no regard for target acquisition, they just shot into the smoke.
Blindly. Yikes. Damn.
So, other than that, let's see, ISIS, right?
Hmm.
So, the big daddy of all terrorists in the 2010s.
Yeah.
ISIS is kind of a shoot off of Al Qaeda, since their founders used to be members of Al Qaeda, namely Abu Bakr al Baghdadi, and they
Big
decided
Daddy.
that they want
Yeah.
a caliphate, not just an emirate, a caliphate.
A caliphate.
Yeah,
Okay.
remember
Crusader
this meant
Kings.
an empire. So they decided to set this caliphate up in Iraq, since it's pretty unstable.
Hmm.
But we'll touch that some other time. Since honestly, you can't have a discussion about Afghanistan without mentioning Iraq.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we'll have the discussion on Iraq some other time. But basically, um, due to the instability left by the war on terror in Iraq, like ISIS rose to power. Actually, it was the fall of Saddam Hussein that was blamed for allowing the conditions for ISIS to rise, if you think about it.
Ah,
See, the reason here is that as much as a vile dictator Saddam Hussein was, he was able to keep law, order, and authority over all of Iraq.
okay, okay. Wait now. Quick question. Quick side note. Like, was Saddam the guy who had the Amazonian guard? Was he? Is he that guy or
Oh,
no?
I'm not sure. It's within his character to have that, but I'm not sure.
Wow. Okay. All right. All right. You may
But anyway,
continue back.
so after Saddam was like thrown out of the window by the U.S. like twice in one decade, um,
Twice.
I mean, let's be real. There was the Gulf War in 1991, where the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. Basically kicked Saddam in the nuts for invading Kuwait, and then there's the 2003 invasion of Iraq. I'm not gonna get into the reasons of that much right now because it's really debatable.
True. True.
But
True.
but the U.S. did this time permanently kick out Saddam and even executed him in 2006. The power
Oh.
vacuum that left, though, was enough that the separatists of the Kurds, for example, rose up against whatever remained of the Iraqi government, and with that uprising came a bunch of Islamic militants as well. People from
Mm.
the former Saddam regime suddenly decided to do an insurgency, and during this insurgency, ISIS was born. ISIS then decided to, start expanding. and they
Oh,
rapidly did so in 2013 and 2014. It was the Obama administration's largest foreign policy crisis because, as you can see, Iraq and Syria were on the brink of collapse thanks to these two groups. And
yes.
Syria was already under a civil war when ISIS started, going around. It was the Arab Spring of 2010, I think, that activated them. And this actually caused Obama to send like 14,000 more soldiers to Iraq just to shore up the numbers so that, they don't get overwhelmed.
Okay. Okay.
Now, other than that, ISIS just wants, fundamentally wants a caliphate, one that stretches across the entire Muslim world, from the shores of Morocco all the way to Indonesia or the Philippines, depending on who you ask. But
I mean, there was an insurgency here, right, Morawi?
well, yes, the Philippines does have its own Muslim insurgencies. I shouldn't say Muslim, Islamic militant
Islamic. Yeah,
insurgencies.
yeah.
The ones in Mindanao, in particular. Of course, in 2017 there was the battle of. Well, it's not even a battle; it's a siege of Marawi.
Yeah.
Um, and people did say that ISIS was involved in that, but the thing is, that's actually incorrect. The Mounted Group
Ooh.
is not ISIS, not not in the slightest. Like they only pledged allegiance to ISIS, but for all intents and purposes, they are not ISIS. They are just
Okay.
affiliated with ISIS.
Okay. All right. All right.
So it's just a pet peeve of mine whenever someone brings up that the Philippines was suddenly invaded by ISIS. No, it was not. It was
It's just
literally a
some.
local terror group deciding that they had the military muscle to hold a city, which they didn't.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay.
Now, the way that ISIS intended to get this caliphate was to expand through military force. Now, of course, the entire world decided, no, we're not having this, and decided to smack them back down.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, ISIS, ironically enough, despite not having any conquering goals in Europe, was the most successful terror group in the 2010s when it comes to terrorist attacks. From 2015 to 2018, Europe experienced like a string of ISIS terror attacks. Paris in
Gee.
2015 twice from Charlie Hebdo and the Paris terror attacks, the Manchester bombing, several instances of knife attacks and whatnot in London, Germany experiencing some terror attacks, but really it was France that took the hardest L's during all of these years during the terror attacks.
Ah, I remember that because I was a Facebook where you
Yeah,
where you put the
yeah, it's
flag
the
and
frame.
then
It's the frame.
the frame.
But but yeah, France definitely took the biggest L in this, and that's mostly because of Charlie Hebdo. And
What what happened there? Like I actually forgot.
there was this editorial cartoonist that drew a satirical um, depiction of Muhammad. You can clearly see how why this pissed off the Muslims.
Oh my god. Oh yeah.
But as the argument goes, it's freedom of expression. So whether
Yeah.
or not you think it's wrong or not, yeah,
But
I'm not
but
going to
but,
get
but,
into this debate. I'm
but
not
we're
going to
just
get
gonna
into
say
this
that, but
debate.
we're not advocating for any hate towards any religious group. You know.
Yeah, I'm
We're
just
just
saying
leaving
that
that.
the law of the land in France is that it had freedom of speech. Therefore,
True.
the satire was allowed. I mean, they satirize Jesus on a daily basis, and no one gets mad at them for it.
True. True. True.
And the thing is, well, anything regarding Muhammad ticks off the Muslims, honestly. And there was another incident just this month, I think, that
Ooh.
wait, no, not this month, last month,
Ah. Okay.
where a Muslim man beheaded a French teacher for doing something about Muhammad something. But the thing is, it was he did that apparently based on a lie told by his daughter. The daughter was not attending the class of this guy, but he did warn them that he was going to talk about Muhammad, and if the students didn't really like what was going to be said. He advised them to step out. The girl did step out and, went cutting classes. When she
Oh
got
my
home to her
god.
dad, when she got home to her dad, she explained that the teacher was blaspheming, so I stepped out. And then the dad decided to kill the teacher.
Oh, that's the biggest yikes ever.
Obviously, this set off like a massive response from the French population, like, yo, why do we let this happen?
Why not America? Why weren't they attacking America, dude?
You really think they can get into America? You
True.
really think that
America's just like,
after
nah,
9/11,
no one's going in.
after 9/11, you really think they can get into America?
True, true, true. You know what? True.
There
So
was only
Europe.
one time that I can remember that there was a terrorist attack in America that was done by ISIS. And that was the Orlando school shooting, I think. Maybe.
Mm, Orlando school shooting.
Yeah, that was ISIS inspired from what I remember.
Okay, okay, okay.
Now,
Was there any
other than
bombings na parano that happened
yeah,
in America?
what?
Was there any bombings that happened in America na what happened in
No.
any part of Europe? No,
I
wala,
don't
wala.
remember much, but there was one bombing that I do remember, and that was the Boston Marathon bombing of 2010 or 2013. I'm not sure. But
Ah,
I'm not sure who claimed responsibility for that, but I don't remember any Islamic militant ever claiming credit for that. I think it was a lone wolf.
I know. Yeah, I forgot. Lone wolves were a thing in like terrorist countries. No, in it was basically inspired. Parang go
Probably,
bomb people, I guess.
probably.
Okay, okay.
Remember
Going back,
Jihadi John, though?
Jihadi John. I don't know Jihadi John. What that name was? Jihadi John.
Wait, do you not know Jihadi John?
I'm searching him up right now. Jihadi
No, let
John.
me explain it. I mean, this is a podcast. I should explain
Okay,
it.
okay, okay, okay,
So,
okay.
so Jihadi John was this British defector who joined ISIS in like 2014, and he's
Mm-hmm.
the guy behind all those prolific beheadings that ISIS did. Like
Oh,
he's always the guy speaking like, "This is my message to the West. You see this man? He is an infidel. I will kill him because he is an infidel. If you do not stop attacking our group, I will continue to kill more of these infidels live on camera." And then he straight up beheads the guy. He did
yeah.
this for like a couple times before he got drone striked, I think.
Get drone strike.
He got drone
All right.
striked by the states.
Stop. You done. All right.
You done. Oh, actually, speaking of drone strikes, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was in fact killed by a US drone strike and by US Navy SEALs.
Damn. Why
Um,
don't they just go into
this
mountains? No.
this was actually during the Trump administration. Um, it's not really talked about often, sadly enough, but the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was the death nail to Islam's no, not Islam, ISIS's Islamic rampage,
Mm,
since
okay.
they didn't really have any uniting leader left, so they kind of just disintegrated into a group of anarchists. And ever since then, ISIS has remained dormant until, just a month ago, during the US evacuation of Afghanistan, two ISIS bombers decided to target the US airfield and killed 90 Afghans and 13 US Marines.
She. That's the big sad right there.
And,
Damn.
well, it only took one day for America to find them and bomb them.
It's America's answer to everything. If they get attacked, you attack us.
Bomb.
Drone strike. Drone strike.
Did you know that
Damn.
Obama was actually called the drone strike president because he was the one who authorized the most drone strikes?
The drone strike president. Damn. One button away. I like that.
But
I like that.
but hey, I mean, at least his most prolific accomplishment in the war on terror was done by boots on the ground.
True. True.
Now, anyway, with regards to ISIS, and I am
Mhm.
actually afraid that Afghanistan would be a good breeding ground of recovery for them,
Yikes.
considering, and not just them, Al Qaeda too, and all these other terrorist groups. You literally have an Islamic extremist group in control of Afghanistan right now. And these groups from around the world got thoroughly broken during the final offensive against ISIS in like 2018. So now that they have a safe haven, like they did in the 1990s, they're obviously going to regroup there.
That's the
The
rallying
Taliban
cry.
wouldn't, the Taliban just wouldn't look there. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't really
True.
care about international security because they literally are an enigma to international security.
True. True. Oh my God. That's well rallying cry. Damn.
So, just a foreboding warning for anyone listening to this: be prepared to see another batch of terrorist attacks this decade. I don't mean that as a threat. I mean it as a warning.
Because it's true. I mean, you,
Yeah, like
what do you expect?
once these terrorist groups regroup, there's no telling where they'll hit. There's no telling when they'll hit. There's no telling who they'll hit. It'll
Yeah.
happen. It'll just happen.
They won't be satisfied with what they do, right? They'll
They'll
expand.
never be satisfied with what they do, which is why we have the war on terror. We're literally fighting to keep our citizens safe. All of us around the world are trying to keep our citizens safe from these nut jobs that are trying to kill civilians just to prove a point. When their point is something that is so antithetical to the principles that everyone else in the world holds dear.
True. True.
It's a
You
tragedy.
can, you can even say na parang you what they believe is actually a perversion of what the original
It
religion was.
really is a perversion of Islam.
Yeah.
Honestly, everyone says so.
True.
Like Muslim scholars say so. That what the Taliban is doing, not just the Taliban, but like all these terror groups, they're taking Muhammad out of context so much that it's basically character assassination. Like, for example, that whole promise of 72 virgins when you get to heaven if you fight in a jihad. Where did he say that? Where did he say that?
No, with 72 virgins. No.
Like,
Yeah, I
really,
remember.
these guys are motivated by the 72 virgins lie. As well as, there are a lot of young men in the Muslim world that are actually jaded about their whole position in life. Like the middle, surprisingly enough, it's not the poor or the uneducated joining the ranks of ISIS, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, or any other terror group out there. It's actually the middle class and the educated.
Damn. Damn.
Like, you would be surprised. A lot of the members in ISIS were Muslims who originated in Europe.
Wow. I did not know that. Jesus. Why Europe? Bakit Europe nga pala?
They feel out of place there. I mean, I can't say that I can't blame them for feeling out of place, but do you really expect the
Yeah.
Europeans to, suddenly shift their culture just to accommodate a refugee minority?
True.
Like, we are talking about cultures here. They're actually lucky that they're able to practice their religion while in Europe. If this were the other way around, do you really think Christianity would be thriving in the Arabic Peninsula? I don't think so.
Yeah, it won't. It won't. Too much beef.
Which yeah, I understand the whole concept of like feeling alienated in this continent, but then they don't realize exactly just the liberties that they were granted, since
Yeah.
they were indoctrinated since birth to believe a certain religious identity. And this is the same way of how Nazis were able to convert a lot of admittedly conservative people.
Mm-hmm.
They align with a few things, and then these people start getting pulled in more and more to their side because they keep making seemingly more and more correct points. But the thing is, they're misconstruing the truth by a lot.
Yeah, you make it sound enticing. To be
They make it
honest.
sound enticing. They want you to join them. They promise you power. They promise you purpose. When in reality, all you're doing is setting yourself up for death for no reason.
True. It's the biggest yikes ever.
And to think that that thousands of young men from Europe, Asia, the Middle East, Africa were all duped into thinking that they would make a difference by joining ISIS, by joining Al Qaeda, by joining the Taliban. It might have meant something if they joined the Mujahideen, but it doesn't mean anything now that they joined actual terrorist groups that are out to murder people who
Innocent people.
disagree with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Biggest yikes. Hey guys, young people out there, 72 virgins don't exist. They don't.
It,
It's a
it really isn't
lie.
in it really isn't in the Quran that God promises 72 virgins should you die in His name. Like, I mean, I'm not an expert in the Quran, so all I know is that it doesn't exist in that particular context, but it might exist if you do some actual charitable deeds. Killing isn't one of those deeds. Muhammad himself did say that whoever does not respect the non-Muslim is no Muslim. Do you understand that? The
I guess
Muslims
they.
actually do promote tolerance, and it's really not what the terrorists make it out to be. No, Islam is not exactly exclusionary. Sure, we have a lot of fundamental differences with them as like a Christian-based society, but the thing is, these radical terrorists are taking it to another level, a level of unreasonability only on par with the Nazis.
True. They're radicals.
Yeah.
They're super radicals. All right.
So,
Well,
what's your next question?
next question is, why is the Middle East such an interest to the US?
Oh my
This
God.
might sound weird, but I heard some people say it was because of minerals or something like that. Is it true?
So, of course, someone's gonna bring up the whole haha, America only wants oil. No, absolutely not. So, allow me to explain. The United States' interest in the Middle East is twofold. One, for geopolitical security reasons, and two, for economic reasons to supply for not just for the United States but for the whole world. So let's start with the geopolitical reasons. Remember how I first said that Israel was defended by the United States all these times?
Yep.
Now, the thing is, the reason why America is in the Middle East mostly is to defend Israel because the US does believe that it has a moral obligation to help Israel since, you know, land of the Jews, land of the Bible. So Americans, being the hyper religious nation that it is,
Hmm.
decided that the Jews needed help because they're the chosen ones, and by helping the chosen ones, it might very it's stupid, I know, but basically Israel became like a valuable partner in the end because
Hmm.
they do provide like a forward operating base in the Middle East. Like they're really in a convenient spot too, since they're in the middle of the Eastern Mediterranean. So it's literally the same distance away if you fly to Libya or if you fly to Italy. It's also the same distance away if you fly to Russia or to Yemen. So, really
True.
convenient position for the United States military.
Mm.
And other than that, there's also protecting Saudi Arabia, the UAE. You can argue about Iraq and Afghanistan as being part of that security umbrella, but Afghanistan clearly isn't anymore. But Iraq, maybe, but who knows? In terms of protection, though, it really is Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, and Turkey. The rest, well, there's clearly a difference where there's U.S. forces and where there's not in terms of like stability.
Stability.
I
Okay.
mean, really, I would call anyone who says Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen are stable a clown. Straight up. You call these places stable?
Yeah, maybe it's when you look at it, just like, yeah, hey, it's fine, it's fine.
Oh, sure, civil war is fine. Sure.
Well, maybe they're just fighting, you know. Get over it. God.
Anyway, so that's reason one. It's for the security of their allies. The US
Right.
has a defense obligation to these people. Turkey, because it's in NATO. Israel, because of America's sense of moral obligation to it. Saudi Arabia, for actually economic reasons, as well as the UAE and Kuwait.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, with that actually transitions to the second reason why the Middle East is of important interest to the United States. And yes, it does concern oil,
It's a
but
part. It's a part of that. It's. I mean, everybody needs oil. Am I right?
exactly. And that's the thing. It's not just for the interest of the United States, it's for the interest of the world economy. See, Iran hates Saudi Arabia, and Iran has a lot of oil. Saudi Arabia has a lot of oil. If these two fight, if these two somehow, siphon off their own oil, the whole world economy will be crippled because these
True.
two countries are the biggest producers of oil in the whole world, barring the United States itself and Russia. But other than that, um, basically, if these two countries were somehow jeopardized in their security or stability, then the whole price of oil comes way up because you can't trust that a shipment of oil from Saudi Arabia would be safe. So it is up to the US Navy to actually secure the seas in order for the trade to flow smoothly. Now, the reason why this is so important is, well, imagine if pirates get a hold of the oil. What then?
True.
You
True.
can you can see exactly why the US Navy operates on the world thanks to movies like Captain Phillips.
Good
I
movie.
mean, yeah, like you can clearly see the necessity of the US Navy when it comes to patrolling the world's oceans.
Yeah.
Considering that, if international order is to be maintained, there has to be a police force of sorts in order to maintain the security of the ocean. Now, I'm not going to dive too much into the whole US Navy thing because that's like an episode for another day, especially when it concerns the Philippines and the South China Sea. Yes, but
Yeah. Excuse me, West Philippine Sea. I'm just gonna leave that there.
you do realize that the West Philippine Sea only extends all the way up to where the exclusive economic zone is, right? The rest of it
Fuck.
is still called the South China Sea.
Fuck. I go ahead, sir.
So,
Fuck.
anyway,
My bad. My bad. All right. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
where was I? So, right,
Uh.
the
Yeah.
economic interest. Um, there's also the U.S. Army doing the security itself. Like, um, they got to keep the militants away from Saudi Arabia, because remember, ISIS wants a caliphate, and they won't just stop at the borders of Iraq and Syria. They're going to keep expanding. So this is why there's a copious amount of U.S. military troops in Israel, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, and the UAE. They
Okay.
really want to keep these strategic ports safe. And with that, it's actually the reason why the U.S., maintains their strong military presence in the Middle East first and foremost, since it's not just them. I mean, of course, it's going to be more because they want to protect America's interest there for the oil, but by extension, the rest of the world benefits from this because we
I mean,
get cheaper gas for it.
true, but it just so happens that it aligns, right?
Yeah, it
It
just
just
so happens that it
aligns.
aligns. This is in the interest of the whole world, really, like
Yeah.
protection in the Middle East. Sure, I mean, I will admit, U.S. presence did stir up a bit of trouble, considering the last 20 years. But the thing is, I blame this on that Egyptian dude.
Yeah, it's still his fault. He's the one who fostered hate. Not the one.
Yeah, like,
Merkin did nothing. It's like, hey, how you doing? Two
I
planes. Okay,
mean,
calm down.
uh, I mean, people will say that that America did fund terrorist groups, and I'm like, name me one terror group that America directly funded. If you're gonna say the Mujahideen, think again. That's a completely different organization from what it turned into.
Yeah, true,
That's not America's fault. That's on them.
true, true,
That's on
true.
them for radicalizing themselves.
It's their fault. We're not fucking. You're not. No, no, no. America's not basically a babysitter. Like, oh, we don't know what would happen to you next, right?
Have you actually ever heard of Hillary Clinton being called the mother of ISIS?
What?
It's a bunch of conspiracy theories. Like, as much as I personally don't like Hillary Clinton, even I can say that no, that's a lie.
Isn't she like? Does she have like a religion? Like, she's Catholic. No, she's not Catholic. She's Christian. No one, diba?
She's Protestant, yeah.
She's Protestant. So it's weird. It's so many conspiracy stuff. So ano yung minerals? What's the minerals? That's the thing that that weirded me out.
I think we're referring to oil when we talk about minerals, but
Um
if we're talking about rare earth metals, that's in Afghanistan. And no,
ah
actually, the US wasn't there for the rare earth minerals. We didn't even know that was there until we pulled out.
true. Alright, okay. So
So,
yeah,
other than that, at the same time, too, it's not just about the oil they're protecting, it's also the relative stability of the countries, right? And that's
mhm,
because, like, when you think about it, these countries that America is helping to secure, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, think of how rich they are. Think of why they're that rich.
true. They are insanely rich. My God.
Yeah. Like, the standard of living in the Arabian Peninsula is roughly the same as the standard of living in Western Europe at this point.
My God. How the hell do you so many cars?
They formed basically, as cliche as it sounds, an oasis in the desert, a paradise of cities, basically.
Jeez. Right.
And this is thanks to U.S. security for the most part. When you think about it, the stabilizing influence of U.S. security was able to secure these countries enough to help build. But the thing is, the U.S. did screw up on a lot of fronts in other countries. If you're going to admit it, like say Iraq, that was a massive f up, and so was Libya, so was Afghanistan. I'm not going to shy away from it. America did screw up there, but otherwise, look at the strategy that's helped millions of Arabs and millions more expats find new opportunities out in the desert, find
True.
new economies to fuel the global economy, find new ways to pull so many people out of poverty.
True. True. Insane.
And the thing
Hey,
is, I know a lot of people are going to call it American imperialism, but really, imagine a world without U.S. security in the Middle East.
parang shallow ng isipin parang if you keep saying American imperialist, like, dude, you're referring to a term that is already dead. It's gone.
I mean, sure, we can argue that China is an imperialist country for what it's trying to do, but America's power is more based on the reality that it is the only nation on earth that is actually capable of keeping the peace in places where the peace was never meant to be kept.
True. I actually wholeheartedly believe that.
Like, for example, the Middle East. The borders as it is were not supposed to exist, honestly. Like, the entire Arabian Peninsula should just be one country. But the thing
Mm,
is, that's not the case. So, I blame the British and the French for this because they're the ones that drew the borders in the first place.
baguette man. All right.
But yeah, Basically, if self determination was allowed for the Middle East, then the borders would look very different, probably a bit more stable, but the problems would still be there, since the influence of the West would still piss off an Egyptian writer at some point in history, and then he writes a bunch of columns decrying the West for it. It's still going to happen.
True. True.
It's just that America might actually not be needed if these countries were a lot more united about themselves. And it would be a very different Middle East. Think of like Ottoman Empire levels of sized countries.
Damn. Damn.
So,
Wow.
so that's literally why I think like um, no matter what happens, it'll still happen because you'd still have the same dissenting voices in there, considering that these republics would try to be secular as well, since they saw the success of it in Europe. You'll
Okay.
have secularists versus Islamists any day in history.
Okay. All right.
But, well, you want to add anything else?
Well, so are we done with this question? You want me to go to my last question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So now that we're done with Afghanistan, what about Iraq?
Next time.
Next time?
Next
Come
time.
on, a
Because
little.
come
Give me a
come on.
little.
Come on. We're already at the 1 hour mark.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, so
That's
that's
it?
the end. Yeah, that's
Any
the end of our
All
Afghanistan
right
saga
then.
for
All
right
right
now.
then. Well, that about wraps up our segment of the day. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank the rest of you all for hanging out with us on our little rambles. Stay tuned. The Point of Discourse will be back soon with a fresh episode. Until then, enjoy the fall, stay sharp, people, and stay
See
safe.
ya.
Especially one last message for the people of Afghanistan: don't lose hope. There's still a future, just have to fight for it.
Buck up,
Peace.
champ.